guest today, our alumnus from IBM. I hope we will have interesting discussion about cloud, IBM Watson, machine learning today, because for a lot of people it's still some kind of mystery. Maybe we can demystify it today. And recently,
I've worked in the cloud for 5 years. So
yeah.
it's still a mystery.
And recently, for example, we had a discussion. What is Watson? It's a supercomputer, a neural network, or what is that? So Marcus, if you can introduce everyone.
So hello, I am Marcus Belvin, class of 2007, a Keenan Flag full-time program. Worked at IBM before coming here, and then went back to IBM. Did a little bit in software engineering with my undergraduate degree in computer science. After finishing here, where I concentrated in marketing and entrepreneurship, went back to IBM in marketing, did a number of different roles there, and then moved into product management. Right now, I'm wrapping up a technical assistant role, which is kind of a business and technology leader program within the company for another Keenan Flag grad, Mike Barrera, who was here earlier in the fall when we got me on that presentation. So it's been great. I helped kind of organize the speakers here because I don't actually work in their expertise areas around cognitive and machine learning, but as I learned alongside you all, I've been around the block a while for IBM, so I'll be back up for Q&A. And we have an agenda where Paige can go first and Matt second, so I'll both introduce you.
So I graduated at the same time that Marcus did. I have also graduated from UNC twice as well. My undergrad was in math and computer science back in the day. And then after that, spent about 15 years as a serial entrepreneur in games, the gaming industry, video games in particular, games and entertainment. Then after that, came here for my MBA, specialization in entrepreneurship. Wanted to learn more about accounting and going after VC funding. And then through strange means, through a case competition actually, ended up at IBM incubating our serious games program. They're using games to do more than entertainment. Nowadays, huge focus on the intersection of games and cognitive computing, and how is it that you can use Watson in order to really optimize engagement. So that's what I'll be talking to you more about.
My name is Matt Babian. I went to James Madison University as an undergrad, and then started IBM in the year 2000. So I've been at IBM for 16 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. I did my executive MBA and graduated in 2010. I am not an executive yet. Still working my way up the chain. And I'm on my 4th or 5th career at IBM. One of the benefits of working at a 400,000 plus company is you can kind of move around and do different things. So I'm right now a program manager for our cloud, our social clouds, basically mail, instant messaging, email, blogs, such sort of thing. And I'll discuss that more when we get my slides on the screen. Well, you're going to hit it first? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So how many of you are familiar with Watson? One way, shape, or form? Somewhat, some of you. So Watson, our first iteration of Watson came out some years ago. It was this sort of big coming out party on Jeopardy. You guys are familiar with that story. And it's not a story that is especially unique in that every few years IBM takes on a huge grand challenge associated with artificial intelligence. I don't know if you guys remember when they came out with Deep Blue that competed against Grand Chess Masters. Remember that? Yeah, so this was sort of the next iteration. And in essence, what this cognitive computing power allows you to do is it allows you to mine both structured and unstructured data sets in order to find patterns. Right? So imagine that you can take this form of AI, you can teach it just as you would a child in any particular kind of domain, right? And get it to recognize certain kinds of patterns so you can query it from then on out. That was the first initial rendition. Since then, there have been, this has been modularized. So there isn't this one Watson, there's now multiple Watson APIs that are available on IBM's cloud, okay? So imagine now, I mentioned both structured and unstructured data sets. So not only can it read in text from, let's say, Wikipedia, right, as it did on Jeopardy, but it can mine images. You can train it on images. So you can train it, for example, to recognize pictures of cancerous tumors and non-cancerous tumors, what they look like. You show it 50 images, right? And then 50 images of a positive, 50 images of a negative, and now it starts to learn, right? So in this case, which this is actually a true use case, we trained it on how to recognize when tumors are cancerous, and then created an application such that health practitioners might be able to use this on their mobile device, right? How is it that you can augment the way people do work? Now, beyond images, you can also do some other very interesting things, like you can give it speeches, and it will determine, based on the speech you upload, what the personality is of the person who wrote the speech. So we gave it Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and we gave it Trump's last speech at the Republican debate, right? So it's fascinating. All this is publicly available, by the way. If you're curious and you want to sort of see these two next to each other, it's really fascinating. So imagine being able to gauge, again, using not just written text, but also spoken text, because we've got the ability to recognize speech, to determine people's personality. Now go one step further. I can now mine things like social media feeds, including Twitter, Facebook, to determine what are people's tone, what's their emotion that they're expressing, whether they're using a word like I love, I hate, I'm angry, or not, right? So you're able to gauge sentiment, okay? So we've got personality, we've got sentiment, we've got the ability to train in certain kinds of dialogue or certain kinds of domains. Now, imagine also you can take different kinds of data sets, including data that's coming from sensory devices, right? So there's the whole Internet of Things, being able to aggregate that kind of data in order to be able to find different kinds of patterns. So this is where IBM is moving to, and we've placed a huge investment in this, and this ability to not just have this one ginormous AI system, but these modular, OpenStack API assets that developers around the world can plug into in order to make this stuff. So here's what I mean about engagement. So I'm going to give you some examples. In my intro, I talked about gaming and the intersection of games and cognitive computing and what you can do in terms of engagement, not just employee engagement, customer engagement, citizen engagement, which is what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. So everything I just described to you, imagine now, the more information you can gather about people, the more you can start to tailor experiences that are highly customized and curated for them based on what they would find meaningful. So as an example, the very first time we did an intersection of Watson and fashion was with the Met Gala. Have you guys heard of this example? So, big fashion show out in New York City, the Met Gala. And we formed a relationship with Marchesa, the Marchesa brand. And they were coming out with a beautiful gown, right? And the gown had all these really cool flowers sewed into it with these LED lights. And the premise was we wanted to show, as people are tweeting about the Met Gala, based on what tone they're using, are they expressing joy, are they expressing happiness, are they annoyed because the traffic to the Met Gala in New York City is so bad? You know, whatever emotion they're expressing, this sentiment is aggregated and expressed on the dress. So the lights on the dress change color. The gown changes color based on how people are feeling. Now take this one step further into the realm of citizen engagement. We've had numerous discussions lately. In fact, last week I did a keynote with a big conference on 21st century citizen engagement out in Silicon Valley. It was called Engage the Bay. And the whole premise of the conference was, how do you reinvent how people work with government? How citizen engagement, right? How do you reinvent government 2.0? What does it look like? And so some of the ideas that came out of there, as I was talking about all these different kinds of capabilities, when you can in order to be able to find insights as to how people are feeling about things. Imagine if you're driving into a city and you see something iconic about the city. Like, you know how you drive into Raleigh and you see sort of the side of the Civic Center, it's got that really cool oak tree that changes color? You know the one I mean? Yep. So imagine it's turned red, right? And there's actually a reason why it has turned red. Right? You can find out what are people tweeting about with regards to the city of Raleigh that's expressing this kind of an emotion. You see what I'm saying? So this kind of thing, even clothing, right? As I mentioned with the Met Gala dress, if somebody's got a San Jose t-shirt and suddenly it's glowing red, you know, what is it that people are expressing via Twitter and the city of San Jose that's sort of showing this kind of emotion? Using technology and this kind of insight in order to bring people together around things like social programs, okay, how they feel about things. Some other things that came out of citizen engagement in Watson as part of that conference, we had a big discussion about online harassment, right? And imagine using AI not only to flag when online harassment is happening, right? But also being able to create an algorithm so that if I'm managing a bunch of Facebook pages, or if I'm managing first-person shooter or game servers, I want to be able to create an algorithm such that I can be able to uniquely measure and then gate what people's toxicity score is when they come into my system, right? So a few months ago, Riot Games did this. Anybody know Riot Games, League of Legends? Okay, so they came out with a report on Gama Sutra that said that they noticed, or they had guessed, that a bunch of their employees were responsible for harassing customers in their own online game. Okay? So what they did was they used an artificial intelligence to flag when harassment was happening within the game. But then they went one step further and created an algorithm to determine a toxicity score. And they said, okay, those employees who have a high toxicity score on League of Legends, what is their behavior in the workplace? And you can imagine, you can guess, right? If you're going to be a jerk in the game, guess what? Big chance you're a jerk in the workplace too. So they started to relay as part of their HR, you know, if you have a high toxicity score, you're out. You don't lower this toxicity score, you're no longer an employee in games. And it's sort of, this idea has since scaled, and now there's a consortium of businesses, including Intel and IBM and others, as well as working with the White House, the Obama administration, to think about how to use technology in order to tackle this kind of major social problem. Does this make sense? Okay. Some other ideas. So back to image recognition in Watson. I'm doing a lot of really cool stuff now with makerspaces. Are you guys familiar with makerspaces? Yeah? Okay, so think of it, for those who don't know, kind of like these great labs that have access to, where you have access to robotics and sensor devices and sewing machines and 3D printers that can print in polymers or metals. I mean, these really cool kind of massive toy boxes, right? So we're bringing in Watson into these makerspaces in order to do cool stuff. So you should see my kitchen table right now. So I literally have, I've got spheros, I've got droids, I've got, you know, Legos, I mean, all over the place. So we've been playing around a lot with drones in Watson. So we've trained Watson to be able to recognize when someone's roof has damage from hail, right? So you're flying a drone, it's able to see, oh, look at those shingles, okay, you know. It's able to assess, right? So you don't have to send somebody up on the roof in order to do that. So these kinds of things. We're also able to, we were at Marbles Museum. You know that museum? Downtown Raleigh? We were there. There was a big sort of tech expo, and we were there with our drones and showing how to fly the drone with hand movements. So you go this way and it flies to the left. You go this way, it flies to the right. We've also started to play around with mind control devices. So there's these, have you heard of Emotive? Brainwave monitoring devices. These are really cool. We're seeing them more and more in the games industry, such that what we did was we hooked it up to Hungry Hippos. Remember that toy? So the way Hungry hungry hippos, you gotta press, sort of the lever to get it to eat the marbles. Well, with this, we attached, Raspberry Pis, and we had some Arduinos, and we connected it to the sensors on the mind control device. We actually took a Mind Flex, a used Mind Flex, so it's not like we spent a lot of money on this. And what we did was the only way to get your hungry hippo to eat the marbles was by keeping really calm. Like you have to be in like a semi-meditative state to play this game. But it's really cool. We were showing this off, and we've been working with a bunch of high schools and now middle schools who are sort of adding on to this idea. And now we're bringing it into Dell Children's Hospital, for kids who are going through chemo. How is it that they can sort of manage their stress with tricked out hungry hippos, right? But it's so cool, the kinds of things you can do with this technology. Again, beyond toys, beyond drones, we're doing some really cool stuff with conversation bots, right? So you've heard of what a conversation bot is?
Yes.
No? Yes?
Yes.
So imagine you've got your regular conversation bot where you're training it how to have a dialogue with you or with your customer. Imagine you take it one step further. It's assessing the tone of the person it's speaking to. It's assessing the personality, and now it's able to curate a custom conversation. I'm working with two startups. One is, the startup is led by the former chief of police for the city of New Orleans during Katrina, okay? And he's since left, and he's doing this studio where he's creating a disaster preparedness game for kids with Marvel Comics, okay? And the core IP for all of his tech is this empathetic conversation bot, right? So that if you're a kid and you're a 6-year-old and you're telling it, I'm really afraid of a fire, really afraid of fires, and this bot will be able to recognize, first of all, it's a 6-year-old who's talking to me, and now I'm going to curate. Showing fear, I'm going to start to curate a custom conversation based on what I know. Okay. Next example is there's a company that's based out of Connecticut, and they want to do a police mental wellness application with this concept of an empathetic conversation bot. So we went up for a design thinking workshop, and I was there with the chiefs of police for NYPD and for Sandy Hook. They were there too, right? And we were talking about just the suicide rates of police today. And what they were looking to do is they've come up with this really unique algorithm of what kinds of questions do you pose to people in order to determine when they're about to go into a trough of depression, okay? And how is it that you might be able to decipher whether someone has a truly adaptable and agile mind? So have you ever met somebody who, no matter what really awful things happen to them in their lives, they bounce back? There's something about them where they have that kind of mind. So they've got the ability to be able to gauge that, right? And also be able to coach people on how to have that kind of mental agility. So, but they didn't want to have an application where it just asks the cop the same thing every day, right? So, scale from 1 to 10, nobody wants to answer those, right? So imagine if instead, most cops coming out of the academy, they're wearing Fitbits. Imagine if I'm able to gauge, this policeman, for the last 2 weeks, he hasn't been sleeping at all. And in fact, though his behavior has really changed over time, typically he sleeps great, something about his sleep pattern has changed. Now I'm going to prompt a conversation based on what I know about him. Hey, Joey, I noticed the last couple weeks you haven't been sleeping well. What's up? You know what I mean? So this kind of information, how do I gather? I'm not just training a conversation bot to have a conversation, but I'm gathering information, tone, Internet of Things, from wearables, personality, et cetera, in order to curate something highly customized, highly engaging. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to pass it. Now, Annette.
My stuff is not as interesting. Do we have a clicker? Oh, this one? Oh, good. So I work on IBM Connections Cloud. It's our social, all of our social software in the cloud. Basically, where we sit in, we're software as a service. Social businesses is basically the play. So we have three major data centers, one in North America where we service in Dallas and San Jose. Then we have a European data center, which is Amsterdam and Frankfurt, and then an Asia Pacific data center, which is out of Singapore and Tokyo. Security is certainly, we talked about the cloud and how potentially scary it is. Obviously, we try to assign various businesses to use our cloud, and we want to give them the peace of mind that their data is going to be safe and secure. So we have to go through all these various audits and compliances to at least have the paperwork for them to be understand that their data is not going to be lost or that sort of thing. So what is IBM Connections Cloud? So basically, I kind of mentioned. So mobile is a big piece. We do have files, we have wikis, we have IBM Docs, we have instant messaging and chat, we have meetings, communities, which is blogs, wikis. So profiles, basically everyone in IBM has a profile, something where you can search on expertise for a given person. And then obviously if your company buys in, you would have this feature as well. Something that I use very often. Next, communities. Basically, my team has our own community where we get to put different information, documents, different wikis on how do we do certain things, kind of like a runbook. So I'm in operations. Basically, if the website goes down, my phone will ring. Whether it's 2 a.m. in the morning, which happened last night, or over the weekend, I mean, at any point. So the cloud has to be up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So files, basically, a place to, similar to Dropbox, a place to actually store information instead of sending emails with attachments, which takes up a lot of space. You want to put it somewhere where you can just put a link. File connectors, I do not know much about this one, other than a way to add something to your desktop, in this case a Windows device, to be able to drag and drop certain files into the cloud. So IBM Chat, we do have video finally, which is interesting to see people that you kind of never saw in the past. Because I mean, IBM obviously being global, and I work with people in India and China and Ireland. That's kind of the main three, other than across the U.S. And you really don't see a person's face other than whatever profile picture that they put out. IBM meetings.